Thanks for the wonderful symposium. My name is Martin, and today I'm going to talk about the investigation of saliency-dependent working memory encoding using ERP components. This is part of my PhD thesis, and that is being supervised by Heinrich Lissefeld. So I'll start by describing what saliency is. Saliency is when something stands out, like this black sheep among all the white sheeps. Here, for instance, there are some vertical bars and none stand out. But then if one suddenly turns red, it is salient. Also, if one bar is tilted, it is also salient because all the other ones are vertical. So basically, saliency is determined by local feature contrast. Many working memory studies focus on isolated items, which means that they are all salient with regard to the background. And in more complex scenes, the saliency of each item might be the determinant of how much resource is allocated to them. So this is a topic we tackled in previous experiments, where we designed displays inspired from the visual search literature. So our displays were composed of many vertical bars, and on the middle circle, there were 3 target bars that were tilted bars. One was tilted 12 degree, one was tilted 28 degree, and one was tilted 45 degree. So they have different saliencies. The response modality was the color, and participants simply had to recall the color of all 3 target bars. It's important to note that all the targets shared the same relevance, so it was not more beneficial to encode the 45 degree versus the 12 degree. So we found that saliency, in short, has a parametric effect on working memory performance, with more salient bars being recalled more accurately. But today, we will focus on ERPs. And the question is basically, can we track saliency with ERPs? And we'll focus on lateralized ERPs that are the CDA and N2PC. So shortly, for those who may not know, CDA is a marker of working memory maintenance, and N2PC is a marker of attentional allocation. CDA is late, and N2PC occurs over 200 to 300 milliseconds, basically. So our task is as follows. There's a fixation dot that is followed by a memory display for 350 milliseconds, a retention period of 1 second, and then the response display. So here our variable of interest is the difference wave between PO7 and PO8. So the difference wave is subtracting the contralateral minus ipsilateral waves to obtain the red wave that we see here. In this first experiment, we used some simple displays to try and maximize the lateralized ERPs. So all 3 targets shared the same tilt, so either 12 degree, 28 degree, or 45 degree, and they were always on the same side, so either left or right. So there were only 6 possible configurations, 3 tilts times 2 sides. So that's why the displays are quite simple. Our behavioral results found that there was no difference between 28 degree and 45 degree displays. And that could be due to the fact that the displays were too simple and the performance could already plateau at 28 degree. However, the ERP results are a bit more convincing. So here, what you can see is the ERP for the 45 degree displays. There is a clear N2PC between 200 milliseconds and 300 milliseconds, and a clear CDA that we measure from 500 milliseconds on to the end. For the 28 degree displays, there's also a nice N2PC and a slightly weaker CDA, but nonetheless significant. For the 12 degree display, the CDA is virtually the same as for the 28 degree displays, but the N2PC seems much more extended in time. That is, if it's really an N2PC. This data is quite new, so we still haven't written much about it. So all that I'm saying today is sort of beta. The N2PC increases with saliency is still the main takeaway from this study, because all the displays evoked strong CDA. So yeah, we can track saliency with lateralized ERPs. But what happens when we go back to more complex displays as the one we had in our previous experiments? And here the displays are different in that they are more complex by virtue of each target being present in each display. So in each display, there's a 12 degree bar, a 28 degree bar, and a 45 degree bar. And the positions are now random or not fixed to one side or the other. The behavioral effect of saliency is back, and that is still nice to see. But more interesting is the lateralized ERPs. So first, we'll start by comparing the ERP for the condition where all the targets were lateralized on one side, and there's an N2PC and a CDA again. And if we compare with the previous experiment, so the average of the three conditions from the previous experiment, we can see that they have the same pattern, the same time course, basically. So it is among different participants with a different design, but the pattern is replicable. Our second condition is a bit more prototypical of these visual search experiments. That is, we had two targets on the midline, which do not evoke any lateralized ERP because they're on the midline, and one that was lateralized. So when the 12-degree bar was lateralized, virtually no activity could be found, no lateralized activity. And that is because the attention seemed to be focused on the more salient items, the 28-degree and the 45-degree, which were on the midline. When the 28-degree was the one that was lateralized, we find a small N2PC followed by a nice CDA. Finally, when the 45-degree was the one being lateralized, there is again this strong CDA, but there is no N2PC anymore. What we can see though is that there is this positivity that could mean that the 45-degree target is suppressed after being attended in order to attend the other targets. This is kind of like the PD component, although here it's not a distractor, but a target. The next condition deals with two targets on the same side and one on the opposite side. So here, the two targets on the same side should have their activity sum up, and the one on the opposite side should mathematically slightly cancel the activity because of difference waves. And what we can see when 28-degree and 45-degree are lateralized on the same side is that we have an N2PC followed again by this slight positivity and then a very strong CDA. When the 12-degree and the 28-degree are on the same side, we have again an N2PC, although it is delayed in time, but it is not followed by a CDA. And finally, when 12-degree and 45-degree are on the same side, there is basically no lateralized activity. And this could be because when a salient target is present on each side of the display, there is no CDA because their activity sort of cancels out mathematically. Participants remember both the target on the left, the salient target on the left and on the right of the display, which means that we have no lateralized ERP. So the takeaway from this is that lateralized ERPs in displays with multiple lateralized objects are self-confounded. And we tried something to deconfound the ERPs arithmetically. This has been done by Gaspar and McDonald and Lisofeld and colleagues before, but this was in more simple visual search paradigms. And yeah, with simpler conditions, there was usually one target, one distractor, and it was not applied to working memory data. But the rationale is the same, which is that we simply add or subtract the conditions together to make relevant ERPs. I won't have time to go into the equations here, but I can go to them if you have questions. So what we found here is that we isolated the lateralized ERPs for 12-degree, 28, and 45-degree. And we have a CDA for all three targets. Did I say CDA? I don't know. N2PC for all three targets and a CDA for 28 and 45-degree. There is again this small positivity for 45-degree that we find back. If we overlay that with the real ERP from the condition, we can see that they really follow the same pattern. It's a bit more noisy in the observed ERPs because there were less conditions averaged together, but the pattern is roughly the same. And to further validate this, we added all the conditions together to try and reconstruct all lateralized ERP. And this is what we found. And if we compare it to the observed ERP from when all the conditions were when all the targets were lateralized, the pattern is again strikingly similar. So the conclusion is that we can track saliency with lateralized ERPs, but that lateralized ERPs can sometimes be confounded, especially when targets are present on both sides of the display. Luckily, it seems easy enough to reconstruct ERPs from more complex conditions using simple math. All right, thank you. That was all.
Thank you very much. We have about 3 minutes for questions. Oh, that's a clap, not a hand raise. Anyone? Oh, there's Klaus. Go ahead.
Thank you. I have a question about this positivity, which you interpreted as maybe inhibiting the strongly salient stimulus. The timing doesn't seem to match that idea because the positivity seems to come later than the N2PCs for the weaker targets, right?
Yeah, it could be that the attention of allocation is serial, and then attention would be allocated to the 45-degree very fast, and then it would be immediately suppressed and to be allocated on the midline after that. That is my going theory. As I said, this is quite early work, so we haven't decided on a story yet, but that's how I would interpret it.
Yeah, the way I saw your curves, it looked like the N2PC for the 28 and 12 degree came about 50 to 100 milliseconds earlier than the positivity to the 45 degree, which looked like you first attend to the weaker targets, and then 100 milliseconds later, you suppress the stronger one at the point in time where that's no longer necessary.
Yeah, here we do not have an N2PC for the 12-degree target, but yeah, I haven't thought of the results this way, but yeah, I mean, as I said, there's a lot of interpretation possible, and this could be one indeed. Yeah.
Great. Heinrich.
Maybe I can give an answer as well. So if you look at this graph, it's a violet line here. What you see before the positivity, it seems to be a slight negativity, right? And the thing with ERPs is that if there are multiple components that overlap each other, they will tend to cancel each other out. So what a theoretical possibility here is that there is indeed an N2PC to the 45-degree tilted object, which is overlaid by positivity, later starting positivity, which would be totally in line with the serial attention allocation. It's really too early to tell, definitely, but at least I think it's a theoretical possibility that what we see here is really serial attention allocation to each object in the order of saliencies. But yeah, that's early data, as Martin said.
Yeah, thank you. That helps me understanding this.
Yeah, sorry, I meant to mention that, yeah, the PD could cancel the N2PC a bit, but I forgot, so.
Gotcha. All right, thanks very much. Again, in the interest of time, we'll go ahead and move on, but if you do have any lingering questions, feel free to post them in